On Monday, President Joe Biden heads to Austin to visit the Lyndon Johnson Presidential Library. He's commemorating the 60th anniversary of the signing of the landmark Civil Rights Act. The law officially outlawed discrimination in federally funded programs as well as public accommodations. But the trip also brings up another historic moment. It's been more than 50 years since an incumbent president chose not to run for re-election. Reporter Matt Grant went to LBJ's Presidential Library to get better perspective on his, at the time, shocking decision not to seek his party's nomination and the striking parallels to today with President Biden.
At the University of Texas at Austin.
Of course, this was the blockbuster that made enormous headlines around the world.
Echoes of another presidential exit.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
This was not something that most people had seen coming.
On March 31st, 1968, Texas Hill Country native Lyndon Johnson read from a script like this, sending shockwaves when he announced he would not seek a second term amid anger over the Vietnam War and falling approval ratings.
I think he doubted his ability to win the nomination of his party and certainly to win the presidency again.
Presidential historian Mark Lawrence is director of the LBJ Library and Museum and sees similarities between LBJ and President Biden.
Both of them had served decades in Congress before they became vice president and then president. Both of them served as vice president to very charismatic younger men.
Both faced pressure to step aside, LBJ's mainly due to Vietnam, and both were applauded for ultimately exiting the race.
But what's easy to miss is how popular a decision this was. And I think what we're seeing in the early hours after President Biden's decision is something rather similar.
As for Biden's abrupt departure,
I thought it was a really remarkable act of statesmanship.
Another echo from the past. On loan, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, signed by LBJ, the year Kamala Harris was born.
That bill 60 years ago was a major part of how we explain how we got to where we are today.
In Austin, Matt Grant, State of Texas.
In response to his announcement, the daughters of LBJ sent us a statement calling President Biden a patriot without peer. They also thanked him for his, quote, selfless service to all who love democracy, social justice, and the rule of law. President Biden was supposed to visit the LBJ Library earlier this month. That trip was postponed following the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump, and then again after President Biden's bout with COVID. As for the event, it will likely be a toned-down affair compared to the 50th anniversary celebration at the time in 2014. Then President Barack Obama and former Presidents George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Jimmy Carter all attended the summit. And you don't need to visit the LBJ Library in the capital city to understand the impact of the Civil Rights Act on Texas. You can find reminders across the state. In fact, head out to West Texas in Marfa. That small city is now home to the newest addition to the National Park System. Earlier this month, the Blackwell School formally became a National Historic Site. The location marks a painful past in order to educate future generations. It served as a segregated school for children of Mexican descent from 1909 until 1965. At just 6 years old, Jessie Silva saw her heritage literally and figuratively buried in a cigar box.
I had felt a lot of hurt. They went into the classroom and told us write these letters on a piece of paper. We spelled out Spanish. They just marched us out, and that's where I was at. But I could see what they were doing. They buried it, they covered it up, and it says we can no longer speak Spanish. And I said, I felt to myself, what did I do wrong? Why is this taken from us?
These buildings represent a story that is repeated from California all the way through Texas and beyond. And so this park is a 20th century national story.
Mexican American history is U.S. history. There's a story here that represents them and that they can find themselves in these walls, in these photos, in these students.
I don't feel that pain anymore. Today will be my first tomorrow. My pain is in the back behind me. At last. At last.
The Blackwell School is the latest site added to the National Parks Program after being acknowledged by the Biden administration for its place in the civil rights movement. Others include the Amache National Historic Site in Colorado, the Emmett Till National Monument in Illinois and Mississippi, and the Brown versus Board of Education National Historical Park in Kansas. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle, and we'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.